What's up there, LEGO fans, and welcome back. Alex here. In this video, we are going to be doing a build, review, and a placement of a vintage LEGO set. And here it is. What is it? Well, I'm glad you asked. This is the Dungeon Master's Castle. Set number 6086 contains 569 pieces, and this baby came out in 1992, which doesn't seem very long ago to me. However, the sad reality is that 1992 was 32 years ago, which makes me feel really old. But we won't get into that. But let's just for the moment, take a look at how awesome the box looks on this thing. This comes from an era of LEGO that really speaks to my childhood. A lot of nostalgia in this thing. I love the flap. I love how this thing lifts up and you can see some cool shots of the set in the inner flap, as well as a sneak peek at all the pieces inside, as well as the minifigures. Just super fantastic. And I love also the fact that at the back of the box, you have these alternative builds that are not included in the instructions. They're just simply there as ideas for you to think of something else for inspiration to build with the pieces that come with this particular LEGO set. I also want to make mention that this is an era of LEGO sets where they just really gave you so many minifigures. So you're probably wondering, Alex, how in the world did you get your hands on such an awesome LEGO set? And did you in fact really pay $600 for it? Well, let me get to that in just a moment. But first, let me ask the question of how I got this. This came from an estate sale in Texas. You're probably thinking, dude, Alex, you're in Utah. How'd you get it from Texas? Glad you asked again. I have an awesome friend out in Texas who I work with, Joel. He did an awesome job of finding this estate sale. He sent me a picture on my phone, and it had all these LEGO sets that are just, oh my gosh, super nostalgia for my childhood. And I went, oh, I started drooling over these sets. Now, by the time I got that text message, most of them were gone. They weren't selling them cheap. They knew what they had, all right? So hence the $600 price tag on this. Now, I did not pay that amount of money, not even close. I got this thing for 225 bucks. It feels good because the cheapest this thing on Bricklink right now, I just checked before this video, in the United States used 430 bucks. Yeah, feeling pretty good, especially knowing that this is on sale on my Bricks and Minifigs, sealed, $2,000. That's just insane, right, guys? So feeling really good about my purchase. Yeah, I paid a little bit for shipping to get it here, obviously. And my friend, he did get some sweet sets as well. He got all of the Wolfpack guys, the Wolfpack Tower and the carriage. So he made out like a bandit too, but really happy he was there to find this for me. Let's go ahead and get started on this, guys. Let's go ahead and get this thing unboxed. I did actually clean the pieces. It looked like it had been displayed for quite some time with the amount of dust on all the pieces. I sent it through a wash cycle and got this all cleaned up, and I repackaged it so it's ready to go nice and fresh for this build and review. So let's go ahead and get started and take a look at this thing. We'll give it a quick little review, and let's go ahead and find a spot for it downstairs in the castle layout. And we are back, and here it is, guys. The Dungeon Master's Castle is complete, and it is ringing all the nostalgia bells in my head. Now, before I get into this review really quick here, I do want to mention that I realized that I said at the beginning of the video that this would be a build as well. I was setting up my camera to do a time-lapse build of this thing. However, I decided instead to do a live stream. So my wife Mindy and I did a live stream last weekend. So if you guys were able to join that, it was fantastic having you. It was a lot of fun as always. But if you missed that live stream, go ahead and check it out. Check out all the live stream videos, and you'll see that one there of this build. Now, before I get into just the build itself, let me talk about the instructions. So here's the instruction booklet. Super thin, right? Now, first off, I just love the looks of these things. That classic yellow. Now, in the live stream, we noticed that there's this hotline you can call. It's called the LEGO Maniac Helpline, and there's a 203 area code phone number. And Mindy actually called it to see if we can get help building our castle. And guess what happened? Nothing. It's disconnected or doesn't work anymore. I don't know. I was disappointed. I was hoping that I'd get some like old lady's voice on the other end asking or telling us that she's ready to help us build our LEGO set. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. So, but yeah, here it is. Man, very different than today's instruction booklets. This thing goes through or progresses through the build so quickly. From step to step, there's a lot of pieces added. Now, I will say what was challenging for me was the fact that there's no illustration telling you how many pieces or what pieces are needed in each step. And I struggled with that. Also, there was a lot of times where I was like, oh man, that's a piece that's not there. I should put that in there now because apparently it was added previously that I missed. So that was a challenge. But in the end, it got done pretty darn quick. There are only 35 steps in this thing. 35 steps for a 569 piece Lego set. That is pretty impressive. I mentioned earlier minifigures. There's 12 minifigures in this thing, which is unheard of for a set in that price point. 12 minifigures, all fantastic looking figs. They're all in great shape. There's no cracked torsos or arms. The horses look good as well. I even have all the plumes and the extra plumes that come with the set originally. The minifigures look fantastic. They all have their place to help guard this little castle. You'll notice that this thing does have one of the glow-in-the-dark ghosts, and you're probably wondering if it still glows in the dark after over 30 years. And I'm happy to say that yes, it still glows. I held this thing up to a light bulb, shut all the lights off, and sure enough, it was glowing very brightly for maybe 5 seconds, and then it started to kind of dim away, but it still worked pretty well for the moment. Now, the ghost does have a spot or a room in the castle. He's in one of the towers and behind one of the doors. So he stays locked behind there until an unsuspecting minifigure opens it up and gets scared to heck. Now, I will say, Minnie brought up a good point about the ghost. She's like, what's the point of the ghost? Were ghosts like a big part of medieval times? And I don't really know if that's the case or not, but we always seem to get ghosts in our castle-themed Lego sets back in the 80s and 90s, just kind of how it was. There's also a wolf pack guy who comes with this thing, and that is because he's the prisoner of the Black Knights, and he gets thrown in the dungeon because this is the Dungeon Master's castle, and I gotta say, the dungeon is pretty sweet. It's just this open area here in the middle of this raised base plate. There's nothing down there, so we can just plop our prisoner down there and he just kind of sits there and does nothing. Now we can remove everything out of the way here so we can get a good view of the so-called dungeon, and that includes this plates with the well here. But if I were the Dungeon Master's castle, I would actually use this space for storage or a room or something like that. Because there's not a lot of space to begin with, and the dungeon is a pretty comfortable looking area to put something in other than just your Wolfpack prisoner. The main feature of this castle, of course, guys, is going to be the drawbridge. That's the main draw, right? Now, it works very, very simply. You have this crank here on the side, goes up and down so smoothly. And of course, there's this secondary door that's attached to a string in the back, and that allows you to pull this gate up and down to allow secure access into the castle. And as one would expect, the Black Knights have also added a secondary drawbridge, a very small one here at the back for emergency escape situations or to smuggle somebody in or whatever the case might be. Always nice to have more than one entrance. Now, as far as this whole castle goes, I will admit it's nothing special by today's standards. If I were to compare this to a modern day castle, this thing wouldn't do so well. I mean, I just built the Mountain Fortress. The Mountain Fortress is, well, it's a fortress. It's huge. It has a lot of interior space and detail that's quite incredible. Yeah, it's a lot more expensive, but it's actually less expensive than this thing is on Bricklink. If I were to ask my 12-year-old Jimmy to come up here and I said, hey, Jimmy, look at this castle. What do you think of this thing? He would look over it and go, yeah, that's pretty cool. I like it. It's nothing special. But the difference between him and I on this thing is that this is a castle from my childhood. It's not a set that I ever owned, but I remember looking at it in catalogs, staring at it, wishing that I could afford this $85 castle set because to me right now, it's all about the nostalgia. It reminds me of my childhood, a time where I was just happy to play with Lego all day, which is really what I did at that age. So back in 1992, I was about 13 or 14 years old, so I didn't have a job quite yet. Any money that I had went towards Lego, of course, but it went towards the city sets. I was building a Lego city, and I could only really focus on one main theme. They had city, they had, of course, castle, they had pirates, and they had space. And I dabbled in all 4 of those, but castle was the one I dabbled in the least. This thing here, having it now that I'm building a castle theme in my basement, was something that I just really, really wanted. So when this came up with the opportunity to buy it in that estate sale, I jumped on it and I'm really happy to have it here in the collection. But as far as the castle goes with its structure, it's just walls. It's got a couple of cool towers. It doesn't really have much specialness aside from that, other than the nostalgia of it. Back, of course, in 1992, an $85 castle, if we adjust for inflation, that would cost $190 now. That's a pretty good jump in price. But if we compare this to a castle now, like a 3-in-1 castle, that Creator Castle, which is $100, which has, I think, close to 1,500 pieces, but only 3 minifigures, I think $85 back then is a great value. $190 nowadays. Gosh, if we got a castle that had 12 minifigs in it for less than $200, that would be insane value. So it holds its own even today, guys. So there you have it. There's not much to really review other than that, honestly, guys. Other than that, it's a really cool nostalgic castle set. Reminds me of my childhood. Happy to have it here. So let's go ahead and take the opportunity now to take this thing downstairs and get it placed in the castle layout. And we are downstairs, and here is the Dungeon Master's Castle placed in the layout, and I gotta say, it looks epic. I mean, it looks cool upstairs, but seeing it here, surrounded by other castles and trees and pigs and goats in its natural habitat, it looks amazing. So happy with how this thing looks, my goodness. Now, I did have to move the Lowenstein Castle over, and I changed the orientation on that so that the front door is actually facing forward here, and it looks a lot better, actually. So I'm actually happy that turned out the way it did. So where the Dungeon Master's Castle is sitting, there was actually a 32 by 32 base plate I just replaced, so it worked out really well with placement there. Surrounded it with trees, some flowers, and things like that to kind of help integrate it, obviously. We have the Wolfpack guy kind of sneaking around the front lawn. The knights are leaving the castle. They're going downtown to compete in the jousting competition going on, because they are a legitimate faction and can compete in that. I also gave them some crops to grow in the backyard. So there's some lettuce and some tomato plants. I'll have to add some other stuff there later. I also gave them a farmer servant there as well to tend to that stuff. And the castle also has a maiden. I thought it'd be kind of cool to give them a maiden. The castle needed a woman's touch, so she's helping out in that regard. But she's just not any maiden. No, she has a story. So her story is that she was born into the Black Falcon faction, and as a child, she ran away from the mountain fortress because she did not like how cold it was, because it was cursed with eternal winter from a really nasty wizard many years ago. So she did not like that, and yes, I got that idea from you guys when I was doing the review of the Mountain Fortress, so thanks for that idea. I think it's awesome. So the Black Falcons are always looking for the runaway child, but she's just next door in this castle right here, and she's enjoying, of course, the much warmer temperatures. And yes, she has a falcon that is her pet and her friend. She has had this falcon since she was a child, since every potential soldier of the Black Falcons gets a falcon to train and to be with them throughout their life. So that's it. That's the story, and I'm sticking to it. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed the payoff here if you have been watching for this long. Thanks so much, guys, for watching. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.